Imagine existence ensnared within stone walls, less shelters and more confines that held fast both life and hopelessness. Medieval sieges resembled lethal games of strategy played with human lives, provisions dwindling without the faintest hope of aid. Time itself became a grim sentence. Illness flourished in the damp shadows, and betrayal festered like a festering wound. Walled settlements were reduced to waiting sepulchres. Visualize the odor of burning bodies mingling with the sharp smell of terror, where cleverness and cruelty blurred the boundaries between reason and frenzy. These narratives chronicle remarkable sieges, instances where simply being brave was insufficient for survival. A touch of irrationality was a prerequisite. Embark with me now on a journey to an era when the imposing ramparts of stone castles, as formidable as they seemed, could morph from protective shields into inescapable prisons. Within the medieval landscape, the art of siege warfare was a bleak and protracted ordeal, demanding immense patience and fortitude. With the passage of time serving as the ultimate adversary, stretching the human spirit to its breaking point. When fortifications ceased to offer protection and instead confined, the once reassuring stone structures became a suffocating tomb for those trapped inside, cutting them off from both allies and the possibility of escape. Inside, a gradual decline in optimism took root as food supplies dwindled to almost nothing. The once vibrant marketplaces now lay unnervingly silent, a stark reminder of a life that had vanished. Each sunrise marked another step toward despair, and the daily routines were colored by an underlying anxiety. Strict rationing became an absolute necessity, where every scrap of food and sip of water was precious, and those in charge grappled with the anguish of considering increasingly desperate measures. They say that time waits for no one, but during a siege, it was a weapon wielded with deliberate cruelty. It cast its oppressive shadow over the besieged, eroding spirits, with each moment marked by the sun. What started as a faint glimmer of hope faded as the weeks stretched into months, and the promised relief from allies vanished like the morning mist. For the assailants, time was a silent accomplice, exerting pressure without the ring of swords or the impact of shields. The longer the inhabitants resisted, the more their humanity eroded, as the lands outside their view were scorched and hungry children cried out. Starvation, the ever-present specter, consumed the very fabric of existence. With storehouses empty and spirits drained, even the most meager supplies became treasures worth fighting for. The pangs of hunger were not solely physical, they were also emotional, devouring hope and planting seeds of resentment among the fortress's occupants. Their formerly lively eyes grew dim as faces became mere skeletal outlines of their previous selves. Horses, which had once proudly paraded in their coverings, now met their end on dinner plates. Sacred artifacts were melted down, reduced to items of trade in a cruel inversion of need, overriding reverence. Yet in stark contrast to the visible foe and the palpable hunger was the unseen threat of disease, thriving in crowded conditions. The absence of sanitation turned the enclosed spaces into breeding grounds for illness, making enemies of every cough and fever. The foul odor of waste permeated the air, while mounds of refuse piled up in corners. Public wells, once teeming with life, became channels of sickness with every drink. Medieval medicine, a blend of superstition and guesswork, often blamed celestial influences or moral failings, leaving people to plead for divine intervention as clergy presided over increasingly frequent burials. Within this unbearable environment, treachery lurked, silent and everywhere. Hunger or fear could transform comrades into self-serving betrayers, whispering promises of escape that led only to the enemy's embrace. Trust was fragile, and every suspicious glance could trigger unforeseen consequences. Spies and informants, weaving their complex webs of deceit, flourished in the turmoil, and sudden sounds at the gate could signal impending treachery. Those on the outside exploited these vulnerabilities, using the primal instincts of survival as their most potent weapon in the siege. The complexities of siege warfare also manifested in terrifying demonstrations of aggression. As ingenuity met necessity, engineers devised fearsome contraptions designed to demolish both fortifications and morale. The sound of catapults launching their projectiles and the hiss of flaming arrows transformed the once peaceful skies into scenes of violent chaos. As defenders scrambled to repair the breaches, sparks ignited homes as if ushering in a fiery apocalypse. The very landscape seemed to groan under the weight of such deliberate destruction, a vivid reminder of humanity's relentless capacity for invention and conflict. Yet after the fury of battle subsided, the dangerous hope for mercy emerged. Surrender was a risky gamble, offering a slim possibility of life over certain death. Compassion was a rare commodity, often a whispered possibility rather than a reality. Stories of clemency proved as legendary as dragons, with brutal retribution frequently being the norm, and tales of the horrors endured became cautionary legends passed down through the generations. Thus, the act of surrender carried immense weight, a complex negotiation where self-governance was exchanged for the mere chance of survival. Finally, when all that remained were torn banners lying crooked in the dust, a white flag of truce might appear, fluttering like a restless ghost in the breeze. Each cautious step towards surrender was filled with regret, resignation, and perhaps the faint comfort that life could endure even in defeat. The scene demanded a quiet acknowledgement of a chapter concluding, where the act of yielding was less a display of defeat than a demonstration of enduring spirit. Even within the confines of stone and peril, the end of a siege bore witness to human resilience, weaving narratives of courage and persistence into history's rich fabric. Indeed, as siege warfare unfolded, it revealed a paradox against logic, an exhausting testament to human endurance amidst savagery. Stone barriers intended for protection became restricting enclosures, while those outside and inside suffered together in a cruel unity. At its core, a siege was an enigma, a disordered symphony that showcased the human ability to persevere amidst darkness. In overcoming such ordeals, those who survived were not simply conquerors or conquered, but enduring symbols of resilience in the face of time's relentless advance. In the early 13th century, Rochester Castle stood as a powerful example of Norman architecture and steadfast defense. Its strategic position on the River Medway in Kent made it a vital passage to London. This castle, with its towering stone walls and imposing keep, was central to the elaborate strategic maneuvers of King John's conflict against his rebellious barons during the First Barons' War of 1215. Controlling Rochester meant holding the key to London, the kingdom's vital center. Constructed with robust durability, the castle embodied the era's aspiration for absolute security, with its keep serving as both a residence and a final sanctuary during times of danger. King John, known for his oppressive rule and unimpressive military campaigns, faced a nation on the verge of civil conflict. His rejection of the Magna Carta, a document he had been forced to endorse only to disregard shortly thereafter, had ignited the flames of rebellion. Rochester Castle became a symbol of defiance, held by William d'Aubigny, an ally of the anti-John barons. During this turbulent period, the fortress transformed into a beacon of resistance against a tyrannical monarch. John's forces, desperate to retake such a crucial stronghold, arrived swiftly, setting the stage for one of medieval history's most notorious sieges. The siege commenced in October 1215, turning Rochester into a theater where the broader drama of medieval England unfolded. Nobles from various regions aligned with the rebellion, seeking to depose John and install Prince Louis of France as his successor. Within this arena of conflict, King John's resolve was both challenged and demonstrated, employing siege tactics ranging from trebuchets, launching stones at the resilient castle walls, to the more drastic method of underground mining. Under the cover of darkness, John's engineers labored tirelessly, excavating tunnels beneath the stone walls, propped up by wooden supports destined for a fiery destruction. This represented siege warfare at its most ingenious, combining conventional might with the grim creativity that medieval battles demanded. Then came an unusual tactic in siegecraft: the brutal use of pigs. Not for sustenance, but as a means of destruction, these animals played an unexpectedly vital role. Historical accounts mention pigs selected for their fat, which acted as the accelerant when fires were set beneath the castle walls. This might sound strange, yet in the harsh reality of medieval warfare, where necessity drove innovation, even the most peculiar methods were employed to achieve victory. As flames consumed the wooden beams, Tremors shook the powerful stone foundations. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and the stench of burning flesh. A horrific vision brought to life in King John's pursuit of dominance. Within the castle walls, the siege pressed heavily upon the defenders. Hunger eroded their determination. Disease spread within the confined spaces, and each passing day diminished hope. Rochester's defenders found themselves besieged not only by King John's forces, but by the relentless specter of starvation and illness, grim companions in their stone sanctuary. For these men, the siege was as much a test of their mental fortitude as of their physical strength. Anxiety and despair hung in the air as palpably as the chill of the approaching winter. Every rumbling sound from below felt like a harbinger of doom. Each day without relief was a testament to their increasing isolation. Psychological pressure became a battlefield in itself as the siege dragged on. The ceaseless sound of bombardment, the sight of their defenses collapsing, and the anxiety over reinforcements that never arrived placed immense mental strain on the knights and soldiers trapped inside. Survival instincts clashed with ideals of honor and duty until individuals, once united by a common cause, retreated into solitude, driven by the primal need to endure. The breach, when it occurred, was both devastating and conclusive. Flames had weakened the castle's formidable stone walls, creating a critical vulnerability. King John's forces exploited this opening with ruthless speed, pouring into the fortification and overwhelming the exhausted garrison. For the defenders, surrender offered no salvation, only subjugation or death. While their leader, Daubigny, and others were captured, their fate sealed King John's temporary return to power with a grim flourish. The Siege of Rochester is remembered in history both as a remarkable example of tactical brilliance and a dark chapter of King John's reign. While the unusual use of pig fat has become legendary, it serves as a poignant reminder of how blurred the line between madness and necessity could be in medieval warfare. Strategically, Rochester's capture allowed John a brief resurgence, though it was overshadowed by the infamy of his harsh methods and unyielding ambition. The siege highlighted the cruel realities of the era and the relentless pursuit of power, in a time when strength resided in stone and steel, and survival was a testament to human resolve in the face of relentless adversity. The First Crusade began as a passionate response to a divine call, summoning believers to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim control. Pope Urban II's stirring speech in 1095 ignited the hearts of thousands, transforming them into both pilgrims and warriors. Their journey was a quest not merely for territory, but for salvation, a pilgrimage imbued with the sacred promise of absolution and eternal glory. As these resolute individuals traversed continents, they encountered hardships that would have crushed lesser spirits: scorching deserts, perilous mountains, and the deadly grip of starvation. Yet each trial forged a deeper determination. Their faith, hardened by adversity, molded them into living symbols of divine purpose. With a collective yearning, they bore the cross not only on their shields, but as an emblem within their hearts. After a grueling 3-year odyssey, these weary survivors finally beheld the sacred walls of Jerusalem in June 1099. The city, revered by Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike, stood defiant, its fortifications marked by both time and profound religious significance. For the Crusaders, this was no ordinary siege. It was an epic confrontation between heaven and earth. Driven by dwindling supplies, the Crusaders faced desperate circumstances. Resources were scarce and thirst plagued them under the relentless sun. Yet, like the sun itself, their fervor burned brightly, their desperation sparking grim ingenuity. Siege engines materialized like wooden behemoths, constructs of rudimentary genius propelled by divine urgency. The air resonated with the raw sounds of war, the clang of metal, the unsettling twang of catapults, and cries that merged with Jerusalem's prayers. They knew time was against them, each passing day draining strength from their ranks. Yet with tireless energy they toiled, assaulting the city's defenses with unpredictable ferocity. These warriors engaged in acts of perilous bravery, scaling walls and hammering at gates. Every breach was viewed as a miracle, an act of divine approval etched into both stone and memory. Then on July 15, 1099, the Crusaders unleashed a final, frenzied assault. What followed was a whirlwind of chaos and slaughter. Jerusalem itself seemed to weep as its streets ran red, a torrent of carnage turning the sacred into an echo of human suffering. Chroniclers recount blood ankle-deep, each trickle tracing stories of fervent belief mingled with fanatical brutality. Within this tempest, salvation was claimed through relentless death, the eagerness to conquer embedded in every grim swing of a sword. Inside the shattered walls, a terrible reality came to light as the victors celebrated amidst devastation. Yet there was a haunting emptiness. The Crusaders, their prayers mingling with the dust and decay, sought solace in the hollow triumph at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Tending to wounds, both physical and moral, they grappled with a singular question: was such destruction truly divine satisfaction? In the aftermath, the victorious faced the formidable task of establishing order within a land ravaged by their impulse for conquest. Jerusalem, holy yet desecrated, stood as a testament to the complex interplay of faith and violence that characterized the Crusaders' actions. The newly established Crusader kingdom, a fractured remnant of martial piety, existed as a grim reminder of war's dual nature, both liberating and damning. Amidst this tapestry of conquest and remorse, faith persisted. The siege illuminated the Crusaders' inner landscape, where devout determination met unchecked fanaticism. Here, moral conviction was tested by the fervent conviction that their actions were divinely ordained. Beneath their triumphant exterior lurked flickers of self-awareness, a recognition of their dual role as both liberators and defilers. Haunted by the specters of faith, they navigated a spiritual threshold. For Jerusalem's inhabitants, this siege marked a furnace of suffering. Muslims, Jews, and Eastern Christians united in a desperate defense, their shared faith tested in the crucible of survival. Cut off from aid, they roamed sacred passageways in search of sustenance, the city's walls transforming from sanctuary to unavoidable curse. In this ordeal, the unity born of necessity forged fragile alliances and gave rise to stories of shared endurance. In capturing Jerusalem, the Crusaders temporarily seized a treasure coveted by the three Abrahamic faiths. They turned the city into a bloody altar, layered with complex symbols of spiritual striving and a bitter testament to the clash of beliefs. Subsequent crusades and ongoing conflicts cast a somber legacy, their shadows lengthening through time, reflecting the lasting scars of a siege that had forever altered the medieval world. The narrative of Jerusalem serves as a lens through which we can view humanity's unending search for meaning amidst chaos. Though the Crusaders sought divine favor with blade and might, the enduring lessons of their bloody campaign invite a re-examination of power, faith, and the uneasy coexistence between belief and fanaticism. This medieval echo offers a reflection on the arrogance of certainty, urging the building of bridges where sieges once raged, and reminding us of our ongoing struggle, a battle not over territory, but the very soul. In the tense mid-13th century, England teetered on the brink, a kingdom trembling under the weight of King Henry III's troubled reign. His rule, perceived by many as marred by excesses and favoritism, fueled deep discontent among his barons. Disagreement escalated into conflict, igniting the Barons' War. At its core stood Simon de Montfort, a nobleman whose charisma unified the dissatisfied peers. Following de Montfort's death at the Battle of Evesham in 1265, his loyalists sought refuge in Kenilworth Castle, a stone sentinel in Warwickshire, which served as their final stronghold against a resurgent monarchy. It was a formidable fortress, with its massive walls, intricate defenses, and the widest moat in Europe. The castle presented a daunting obstacle to any who dared approach it. As spring arrived in 1266, Prince Edward gathered the royal forces, assembling them around Kenilworth. This was not merely a siege fought with stone and steel, but rather a grueling test of wills between royal authority and noble defiance. Inside, the garrison prepared for the siege, settling into a pattern of endurance, where each day was a struggle against dwindling supplies and the growing impatience of an impending assault. Yet the moat that kept attackers at bay also spread disease, the stagnant water a breeding ground for illness. This unseen enemy weakened the defenders' strength as food supplies shrank and every meal became a strictly rationed ordeal. The royal army sprawling outside Kenilworth's imposing walls brought with them the harsh innovations of medieval warfare: trebuchets, Those enormous slingshots with terrifying names like God's own catapult hurled stones that impacted the walls and fire that turned the sky orange, threatening the defenders who watched the approach of siege towers inching ever closer. These wooden giants, covered in hides and mounted on wheels, served as a stark reminder that although progress was slow, the enemy was subtly, relentlessly drawing near. Siege warfare was not a sudden storm, but a slow, persistent nightmare. Outside was chaos. Inside was monotony, until the spies appeared. With options above ground and through the air proving rather ineffective, digging beneath Kenilworth began in earnest. Sapping. This clandestine art of undermining involved siege engineers excavating tunnels to weaken the stone walls from below. This subterranean game of cat and mouse was fraught with danger, for collapse was a constant threat. From the dark depths, faint sounds of picks striking soil signaled unseen opponents drawing ever nearer in a grim underground struggle. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts flickered like tattered banners in the uncertain winds. Noble envoys under flags of truce navigated perilous negotiations that offered brief glimmers of hope, only to be extinguished by mutual suspicion. Peace seemed elusive. Pardon as a prelude to surrender was viewed with suspicion, while past grievances cast long shadows over any possibility of resolution through negotiation rather than force. As the siege dragged from the heat of summer to the chill of autumn, Kenilworth's defenders faced the stark realities of their plight. The granaries, once full, now stood empty. Sustenance was salvaged from any remaining scraps. Hunger and disease preyed on the defenders' resolve like relentless crows pecking at what remained of their spirit and strength. Malnutrition weakened bodies. Fear of betrayal seeped into idle thoughts. Each coughing fit was a warning. Every fevered moan, a morbid anticipation of impending surrender. December finally saw Kenilworth succumb to its fate. The damaged barricades echoed hollowly as defenders relinquished them, their surrender negotiated under the terms of the dictum of Kenilworth. It promised penance and penalties rather than complete annihilation, acknowledging not the glory of conquest, but the brutal inevitability of attrition. The castle, a testament to resilience scarred by the siege, changed hands, but its stone walls, stained by valor, whispered stories of stubbornness when left to silence. The siege's toll extended beyond the stone walls, leaving its mark like a brand on both bodies and spirits. For those who were besieged, it was a grueling testament to instinct and endurance, weaving threads of loss through loyalty. For the victors, it was a Pyrrhic victory, a price paid in prolonged exhaustion and shattered ideals. Amidst the debris left by this harrowing event, Kenilworth's legacy loomed large. It exemplified the grinding duration and tactical persistence of medieval warfare, a precursor to future conflicts resolved not purely by military might, but through the prudence of necessity and the art of reconciliation. Through this arduous period of history, Kenilworth endures as more than just a conquest. Its stone walls, once barriers, now serve as conduits of memory. While the turmoil of its time has faded, the story etched into its being remains one of defiance against overwhelming odds, of endurance against the erosion of time, a legend unfolding in the flicker of firelight, echoing with the resonance of human tenacity and hardship. 34. The siege's toll extended beyond the stone walls, leaving its mark like a brand on both bodies and spirits. For those who were besieged, it was a grueling testament to instinct and endurance, weaving threads of loss through loyalty. For the victors, it was a Pyrrhic victory, a price paid in prolonged exhaustion and shattered ideals. Amidst the debris left by this harrowing event, Kenilworth's legacy loomed large. It exemplified the grinding duration and tactical persistence of medieval warfare, a precursor to future conflicts resolved not purely by military might, but through the prudence of necessity and the art of reconciliation. Through this arduous period of history, Kenilworth endures as more than just a conquest. Its stone walls, once barriers, now serve as conduits of memory. While the turmoil of its time has faded, the story etched into its being remains one of defiance against overwhelming odds, of endurance against the erosion of time, a legend unfolding in the flicker of firelight, echoing with the resonance of human tenacity and hardship. The Albigensian Crusade was more than a military campaign. It was a tempest of madness aimed at eradicating the Cathars, viewed as heretics by the Church. Béziers became a focal point of this fervor, a vibrant city destined for destruction under the guise of divine cleansing. Within the tapestry of religious dissent in southern France, Béziers stood as a city pulsating with life, yet overshadowed by the specter of annihilation. The papal decree roared like a war drum, summoning forces from across Europe to embark on a quest for salvation, cloaked in the armor of conquest. As the chants of religious zeal merged with the whispers of approaching doom, Béziers remained a symbol to be purified beneath the sanctified banner of the Crusaders. 35. The Albigensian Crusade was more than a military campaign. It was a tempest of madness aimed at eradicating the Cathars, viewed as heretics by the Church. Béziers became a focal point of this fervor, a vibrant city destined for destruction under the guise of divine cleansing. Within the tapestry of religious dissent in southern France, Béziers stood as a city pulsating with life, yet overshadowed by the specter of annihilation. The papal decree roared like a war drum, summoning forces from across Europe to embark on a quest for salvation, cloaked in the armor of conquest. As the chants of religious zeal merged with the whispers of approaching doom, Béziers remained a symbol to be purified beneath the sanctified banner of the Crusaders. A gathering storm approached as diverse groups of Crusaders converged. Knights and mercenaries united under a papal mandate against Catharism. They spoke in hushed tones of riches and divine favor, convinced that divine sanction rendered them invincible. Inside the city's walls, tension escalated among the citizens, exchanging the normal rhythm of daily life for the sound of hammers fortifying defenses manned by peasants and militia ill-equipped for such a siege. Every glance westward was heavy with apprehension, prayers for mercy punctuated by the tolling of church bells as reminders of an encroaching doom. The Crusaders arrived at Béziers in July 1209, not merely to lay siege, but to unleash an overwhelming tempest matched only by their zeal. The city's defenders faced not just a physical assault, but a challenge to their very existence and beliefs. Streets that were once bustling now overflowed with terrified inhabitants. Marketplaces were drowned in panicked noise, and town squares echoed with screams, eroding the resolve of those attempting to mount a respectable defense. Traditional siege tactics gave way to chaos as Crusaders submerged the city in a torrent of violence, abandoning practicality for a ferocity fueled by religious fervor. Catapults launched dread alongside stones. Ladders scaled walls slick with the defenders' blood. Each weapon amplified the chorus of destruction that sought to consume Béziers entirely. Within this maelstrom, a chilling command crystallized the siege's savagery. "Kill them all, God will know his own." Attributed to papal legate Amaury de Montfort, these words shattered any pretense of mercy, unleashing a torrent of indiscriminate slaughter. This infamous directive erased all distinctions between believer and heretic, soldier and civilian, turning the city into a crucible of horror. Crusaders driven by zeal became executioners, blurring the lines of humanity beneath a relentless blade of faith. The city's sanctuaries proved useless. Sacred altars were repurposed as execution grounds where blood replaced the sacred wine. Through Béziers' winding streets, faith transformed into ferocity. Amidst the pungent odor of burning homes and the mingling coppery tang of blood, the cries of a besieged people intermingled with battle cries, painting a scene of faith turned deadly. In this tableau, altars became crucibles, the divine twisted into an instrument of despair as invaders prioritized annihilation over salvation. Béziers, once a beacon of prosperity and fervent belief, morphed into an inferno. Cobblestones were awash in rivers of blood. Each drop another tale of fanaticism's blurred boundaries. When the brutal sound of steel faded and dawn revealed a city suffocated in its ashes, Béziers stood as a grim testament to zeal's reach. Survivors beheld a haunting silence, their city transformed into a symphony of loss. Their tales lingered as whispers beyond time's grasp, interwoven with the echoes of lives lived in the shadow of carnage. Béziers' fiery destruction illuminated southern France as both a cautionary tale and a source of terror, a chilling revelation of faith guided by unchecked military fervor. Although the Crusaders claimed victory, theirs was a hollow triumph echoed in haunted glances. Béziers persisted as more than a memory, its annihilation warning neighbors of uncontrolled zeal. Here lies Béziers' profound irony. Through destruction, Crusaders seemingly fulfilled divine will. Yet the victory of faith gave birth to tragic contradictions. This is a portrait of medieval triumph marred by monstrous methods, consecrating the sword strike as the sanctified word. This chilling narrative remains deeply ingrained in cultural memory, marking a pivotal point where beliefs intersected with military might. In remembering Béziers, we confront an era suspended between dedication and failure. Convictions clash against the toll of consequences. Amidst these ruins, questions linger. Did conquest foster harmony or merely amplify discord? Béziers serves as a timeless reminder of faith's reckless pursuits, of righteous fervor twisted by zeal without understanding. Its story endures across centuries, challenging the very nature of salvation achieved through ruin. Béziers persists, a haunting reflection of medieval paradox, cautioning against arrogance by peering into the shadows of fervent salvation. The siege of Antioch was a grim chapter in the First Crusade, unfolding in a world sharply divided by faith and ambition. In the late 11th century, Antioch stood as a towering stronghold in the Levant, a city whose formidable walls reflected Islamic power and intimidated even the most fervent crusader. Motivated by religious zeal and papal promises of absolution, the Crusaders journeyed from Europe, driven to capture this city not simply as conquerors, but as divine instruments tasked with reclaiming sacred territories. Antioch was not merely a destination, it was a test of righteousness against infidels. With the Crusaders at its gates in October 1097, Antioch's towering walls and strategic defenses loomed over them, a citadel designed to repel even the most determined attackers. Stretching over 10 miles, the walls bristled with high towers and thick stone, marking the city as a fortress of considerable power. Inside, the defenders, composed of seasoned Saracen soldiers and local inhabitants, prepared to resist to the end. As the Crusaders approached, they recognized the impossibility of a swift, overwhelming victory and resigned themselves to a siege. Camps sprang up around the city, enduring harsh weather and dwindling supplies as the winter months threatened their very survival. With each passing day, starvation tightened its grip on the besieged Crusaders. Supplies from raids proved insufficient, and the barren lands offered nothing but meager provisions. Desperation drove them to consume anything remotely edible. Boiled leaves and shoe leather became pathetic sustenance, fostering a pervasive sense of despair that eroded their morale and unity. Fractured by hunger, the once cohesive forces began to unravel as the knights and common soldiers alike succumbed to the cruel toll of deprivation. Rumors of relief armies dissipated, leaving hopes dashed against the harsh realities of famine. As supplies dwindled to nothing, starvation forced grim choices that etched a haunting stigma on the siege's memory. In the depths of deprivation, whispers of an unthinkable descent into cannibalism began to circulate. The taboo, profound and repulsive, violated all remaining vestiges of chivalric honor and Christian ethics. Chroniclers of the era would later recount nightmarish tales where the desperate, pushed to the brink by hunger's relentless demand, consumed human flesh, stripping it from corpses as a horrifying testament to survival's insatiable drive. Each bite was an admission of defeat, a fracture of their wavering unity, shrouded in secrecy to preserve remaining morale. Cannibalism stood as a macabre yet undeniable chapter, demonstrating the darkest extremes of survival amidst desperation. When all seemed poised for failure, an unlikely opportunity arose. Treachery from within Antioch offered the Crusaders an unexpected entry point. A secret agreement led to a breach in the city's defenses by a small, stealthy force. On June 2nd, 1098, they infiltrated Antioch's formidable walls, opening the gates for an army frenzied by months of suppressed rage and fervor. They stormed the city in a chaotic, bloody conquest, unleashing their fury upon the inhabitants. Yet victory was plagued by irony. Just as the Crusaders claimed their prize, Kerboga of Mosul's vast relief army drew near, reversing their roles from besiegers to besieged. The cruel hand of fate turned sharply, trapping the Crusaders within Antioch's walls with scarce supplies and an impending disaster at the ramparts. Tension lay thick over the city, close to the breaking point amidst continued hunger and disease. In their desperation, whispers of attempting a breakout spread fear like wildfire. But from the depths of despair emerged a flicker of hope. Visions of divine interventions circulated, promising deliverance through a miraculous relic. Enter Peter Bartholomew, a humble priest claiming a vision from St. Andrew, leading to the discovery of a holy relic. The holy lance said to have pierced Christ's side. The find revitalized Crusader spirits, becoming a beacon of divine favor when all else seemed lost. Energized by the religious fervor it inspired, the beleaguered warriors prepared for a final stand. On June 28, 1098, they surged from Antioch, facing Kerbogha's formidable forces with a defiant courage powered by their fervent belief. In a daring sortie, they met overwhelming odds, not solely with might, but with a valor that seemed to ignite the very air around them. Stories spread of celestial riders joining their ranks, mythical symbols of the divine blessing their struggle. Whether driven by divine intervention or empowered by newfound zeal, the Crusaders repelled Kerbogha's army, shattering the siege lines and securing Antioch. As victory settled over the weary warriors, reality struck. A Pyrrhic victory had been achieved against a landscape ravaged by conflict. Antioch lay scarred, a city depleted of resources, haunted by the ghosts of hardship, endured in the name of faith. Disease and hunger lingered, casting persistent shadows even in triumph. Those left standing bore the marks of survival etched onto their souls, embodying both the glory and the agony that accompanied the crusade. Thus, the siege of Antioch carved its legacy into the sands of time, a testament to the complexities of human warfare, the ambitions, the horrors, and the convictions that defined an era both savage and sacred. If this unusual chapter of medieval life piqued your curiosity or perhaps your appetite, remember to like the video. For more stories from history's darker corners, subscribe to Medieval Grime. We serve our history smoked, salted, and with a hint of irreverence. Stay grimy, and see you next time by the fire. In the year 1147, Lisbon found itself at the center of an ambitious crusade, where spiritual redemption was intertwined with worldly ambitions. As part of the Second Crusade, fighters flocked to the city, drawn by tales of reclaiming holy lands. Yet beneath this veneer of religious zeal lay deeper motivations. The rulers, including Count Afonso Henrique and the influential Bishop of Porto, assembled a multinational force not just to liberate Lisbon from Moorish rule, but to seize the treasures rumored to be hidden within its walls. Ships from Northern Europe arrived filled with warriors ready to engage in this peculiar union of devotion and greed, a divine mission masking an adventure of plunder. Lisbon stood firm along the Tagus River, its striking walls rising like a bastion of resistance. Behind its fortifications, the defenders, a mix of seasoned Muslim Moors and local mercenaries, utilized their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. The Christian forces, a diverse group of various nationalities, faced not only physical barriers, but also the formidable expertise of those defending their home. Armed with more than swords, the Moors employed sorties and hidden paths to maintain supply lines and communications, stretching the siege into a grueling test of endurance. The siege commenced in earnest with blockades, as the attackers sought to starve the city into submission. Siege engines groaned and rumbled, launching stones that crashed against the city's sturdy defenses. Incendiary arrows and primitive gunpowder weapons added an explosive backdrop to the relentless assault. Yet as days turned into months, frustrations festered within the Crusader ranks. Morale plummeted under the weight of endless waiting, failed assaults, and whispered rumors of treachery stirred distrust. Reports circulated of some Crusaders selling information to the besieged defenders, sowing paranoia among the troops. As the siege dragged on, internal tensions within the crusading forces simmered, threatening to unravel the already fragile alliances. Diverse factions, burdened by homesickness and mounting grievances, began voicing doubts about their leaders' decisions. Cohesion became as critical as dismantling the city's defenses. As some troops contemplated abandoning the siege entirely, leaders aware of the precarious situation offered renewed promises of reward to hold the forces together. Finally, after relentless efforts, a breach emerged in the city's defenses. An opening for the Crusaders' fury and zeal. The smell of sulfur and smoke filled the air as explosions shook Lisbon's stones, signaling the beginning of the end. The city's once advantageous defenses now lay vulnerable as determined Crusaders surged through the breach, their cries filling the air with a mixture of desperation and triumph. Chaos reigned as invaders pressed against the beleaguered defenders in brutal hand-to-hand combat, a clash not just of metal, but of human wills. The fall of Lisbon sparked a frenzy of looting and destruction, unleashing the darkest instincts of the victors. The promises of spiritual redemption and wealth came to grim fruition as buildings were sacked and homes were plundered. Indiscriminate violence blurred any distinction of righteousness, with fires breaking out amidst the chaos. Lisbon, once a proud city, now writhed under clouds of smoke and despair. For the inhabitants, this was more than conquest. It was a descent into lawlessness and terror. But victory came at a heavy price. The tally of loss was not confined to the battlefield. Civilians also bore the brunt of the aftermath in Lisbon's streets, now echoing with suffering and ruin. The triumphant cry of conquest was muted by the grim costs, as the Crusaders' victory was overshadowed by moral failure. Their chaotic spree of vengeance exposed the fatal duality of human ambition, where lofty goals succumbed to instincts of plunder. As leaders and chroniclers attempted to frame the conquest as a divine triumph, their narratives glossed over the grim realities. They declared the violent capture necessary, cloaking the bloody aftermath with tales of destiny and the will of higher powers. It was a desperate attempt to reconcile faith with the dark complexities of human actions. And these narratives became tools not only to justify, but also to obscure the harsh truths of conquest. In the aftermath, Lisbon faced the arduous task of rebuilding. From its ashes, the city began to reshape its identity, confronting the scars left by the siege. Reconstruction was not merely a physical endeavor, but an effort to reconcile its past with a future under new rulers. As Christian leadership invested in transforming the landscape to reflect their aspirations, a new Lisbon slowly emerged, a testament to resilience amidst upheaval. The Siege of Lisbon stands as a historical parable, a reminder of war's duality, where ideals are intertwined with the stark realities of survival. This tale, imbued with both nobility and brutality, leaves contemporary audiences to ponder the enduring complexities of conflict. The lessons etched in Lisbon's stones speak to the resilience of civilization, echoing through time as a testament to humankind's simultaneous capacity for faith and folly. In the late 12th century, the Third Crusade was born of desperation, an effort by European powers to reclaim the Holy Land after Saladin's capture of Jerusalem in 1187. Acre, a vital port city in the Levant with formidable defenses, became the focal point in this high-stakes conflict, where the fervor of religious zeal clashed with the grim realities of medieval warfare. As soldiers arrived from the distant corners of Christendom in 1189, a makeshift encampment took shape around Acre's towering stone walls, signaling the commencement of an epic standoff. These soldiers, gathering under banners marked with red crosses, were drawn by papal calls, promises of eternal salvation, and the lure of glory and plunder. Their anticipation was palpable, but mixed with apprehension as they confronted the mighty defenses of Saladin's forces. A collection of noble leaders, including King Richard the Lionheart of England and King Philip II of France, blended ego and ambition with their sense of divine mission, setting the stage for a siege unlike any other. The initial assaults on Acre were met with fierce resistance as defenders on the walls unleashed a hail of arrows and mounted knights launched sorties that tested the resolve of the besiegers. The Crusaders quickly realized this was not simply a battle of military strength, it was a severe test of endurance. Resourcefulness became a lifeline as they constructed siege engines and fortifications to breach the walls. Even as supplies dwindled and disease relentlessly reduced their numbers, this protracted struggle was no longer just about victory, but survival. A grueling clash between starvation, pestilence, and the sharpened blade. Inside the besieged city and outside its towering walls, life deteriorated into a nightmare. Desperation and scarcity led to grim scavenging missions, while malnutrition and sickness weakened bodies and spirits. The acrid smoke from funeral pyres became a constant presence, signaling the relentless spread of death and decay. Yet even in such bleak conditions, stories of resilience emerged, painting a stark contrast to the desperation, the indomitable human spirit burning brightly against a hellish backdrop. Saladin, a formidable tactician, understood that turning Acre into an insurmountable fortress was crucial to exhausting his enemies. By launching counter-sieges and disrupting Crusader supply lines, he cleverly turned the siege into a battle of attrition. His strategy exploited the rivalries and ambitions within the Crusader ranks, increasing tensions among their leaders. Still, determined to press on, the Crusaders rallied around their shared cause, their resolve amplified by religious conviction. This strategic game between adversaries dragged on for months and then years, a relentless struggle punctuated by fleeting victories and harsh realities. The arrival of fresh forces in 1191 marked a pivotal moment for the Christian armies. King Richard the Lionheart and King Philip II of France brought renewed energy and leadership, injecting life into exhausted troops. Richard's legendary reputation for boldness and strategy galvanized his forces, driving daring operations deep into enemy territory. This influx of vigor shifted the momentum, and with newfound resolve and fresh supplies, the besiegers surged forward, their rallying cries echoing across the blood-stained landscape. Still determined to press on, the Crusaders rallied around their shared cause, their resolve amplified by religious conviction. This strategic game between adversaries dragged on for months and then years, a relentless struggle punctuated by fleeting victories and harsh realities. The arrival of fresh forces in 1191 marked a pivotal moment for the Christian armies. King Richard the Lionheart and King Philip II of France brought renewed energy and leadership, injecting life into exhausted troops. Richard's legendary reputation for boldness and strategy galvanized his forces, driving daring operations deep into enemy territory. This influx of vigor shifted the momentum, and with newfound resolve and fresh supplies, the besiegers surged forward, their rallying cries echoing across the blood-stained landscape. The repercussions of Acre's fall extended far beyond its battered walls, establishing the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. However, the toll was profound, and its echoes reverberated through letters sent home, chroniclers' accounts, and the whispered memories of survivors. Acre became symbolic of the brutal price of war, layered with dual narratives of heroism and despair, a testament to the intertwined fabric of honor, faith, and power, along with the human cost of unending suffering. The siege left a lasting impression that shaped medieval consciousness, standing as a somber symbol of both aspiration and folly inherent in warfare. Legends of remarkable figures such as Richard the Lionheart emerged from the siege, his charisma and tactical acumen portraying him as a larger-than-life character whose deeds both inspired and appalled. Unsung heroes also came to the fore, ordinary men and women displaying extraordinary bravery and innovation, leaving their mark on the broader tapestry of this enigmatic era. As time progressed, the lessons of Acre, its courage, its sacrifice, and its relentless struggle became woven into the annals of history. This tale of high stakes and shared humanity resonated through generations, serving as a reminder of the timeless and complex nature of conflict. Acre remained an enduring chapter in the saga of the Crusades, illustrating the stark truths of human resilience and the enduring shadows of war. The Siege of Orléans was more than just a battle for a city. It was a pivotal turning point during the 100 Years' War, a turbulent saga that spanned from 1337 to 1453 between England and France over the rightful claim to the throne. By the late 1420s, the English controlled much of northern France, and capturing Orléans became essential. Situated on the Loire River, the city was a strategic key point vital for defending southern France. Its fall could have opened a direct route for an English invasion, threatening French sovereignty entirely. Orléans was not merely made of bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of French national pride and cultural identity. Within the walls, desperation was palpable as the English siege led to dwindling supplies and eroding morale. The atmosphere was tense, heavy with a sense of impending doom. Yet whispers of hope lingered as prophecies spoke of a maiden destined to save France. Enter Joan of Arc, a peasant girl whose life took an extraordinary turn after she claimed to hear divine voices urging her to lead France to victory. Hailing from Domremy at the age of 13, Joan began experiencing visions which she interpreted as a call from saints, a divine mission to liberate France and crown Charles IX as king. Her simplicity was her strength. It translated complex political aspirations into a clear, powerful demand. Though initially met with skepticism, Charles, the disheartened Dauphin, eventually embraced her cause. Bolstered by her unwavering conviction, clad in armor and radiating determination, Joan's presence stirred something profound. Her arrival electrified a beleaguered nation. To soldiers and citizens alike, she was more than just a girl. She was the embodiment of hope, divine favor made tangible in human form. Joan's leadership marked a fundamental shift in the dynamics of the siege. Her influence was not limited to morale. She also impacted military strategy. Rejecting passivity, she advocated bold, direct assaults, inspiring a renewed offensive spirit among the French. Her presence was magnetic, instilling fresh resilience and forcing the English to reconsider their strategies. When Joan joined the battlefront, myths followed her like shadows. Legends of divine phenomena accompanied her every action, reinforcing her perceived favor from God. During a significant skirmish, an arrow pierced her shoulder. But instead of retreating, she held her ground. Her courage mirrored the newfound tenacity in her troops. The echoes of her resolve transformed fragile hope into tangible action, dismantling the psychological barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. The garrison rallied, liberated crucial positions, and shattered the illusion of English invincibility. The tide was turning. The concept of Joan evolved from myth into an undeniable force shaping France's destiny. Joan's pivotal role in the decisive liberation of Orléans came as she led daring offensives against English fortresses. With strategic acumen and relentless confidence, she broke the English encirclement. Her most notable triumph was the capture of Les Tourelles, a tower considered impregnable by the English. The fall of this fortress was the final blow to English ambitions at Orléans, freeing the city not only in a tactical sense, but also as a narrative victory for the French. With Orléans' liberation, France rejoiced. It was more than just a battle won. It was a profound shift in the psyche of a nation yearning for redemption. Beyond the battlefield, Joan's victory rejuvenated French morale and national pride, igniting a wave of resistance and political consolidation. She shattered the myth of English supremacy, shifting the narrative towards one of hopeful reclaiming. Joan's divine mission united disparate factions into a cohesive French front, galvanizing both nobles and commoners. Her legacy extended to revitalize military campaigns leading to eventual French victory. Despite lacking formal military training, her crucial presence redefined the course of warfare, fueling victories through inspiration and conviction. Yet this extraordinary journey took a dark turn in 1430 when Burgundian allies captured Joan, handing her over to the English. Her trial stands as one of history's great injustices, driven by political vendettas, disguised as ecclesiastical scrutiny. Branded a heretic and witch for following her divine visions and wearing men's clothing, Joan faced relentless interrogation. Her trial aimed to dismantle her symbolic power by discrediting her. Her steadfast refusal to renounce her beliefs led her to a fiery martyrdom on May 30th, 1431, intended to extinguish her influence. Instead, Joan's death amplified her iconography, rallying the French resistance. Her martyrdom transcended her mortality, cementing her as a beacon for justice and courage. Posthumously, she was rehabilitated in 1456. A retrial declared her innocence, undoing the legal injustices and solidifying her status. Joan's revival and reputation continued into modern times. Canonized in 1920, she became a symbol of faith. Admired for her unwavering conviction, Joan of Arc's narrative evolved through popular culture, from plays to films, highlighting themes of heroism and the struggle against tyranny. Her story is a vibrant testament to resilience and enduring legacy, her spirit echoing from the walls of Orléans to the hearts of many, a symbol of hope and defiance immortalized across generations. In the unsettling quiet before a medieval siege, The townspeople huddled behind towering stone walls understood that their most potent weapon was not made of steel, but resided in their sheer mental resilience. The fortifications that once represented safety now became confines, slowly transforming their city into a boiling point of stress and paranoia. Even before the enemy's arrows flew, psychological warfare began. Each passing day instilled suspicion into the hearts of men, women, and children, turning neighbor against neighbor in the desperate struggle for survival. Trust was a rare commodity as fear whispered of potential betrayal. Perhaps a guard asleep at their post, a spy within their midst, or an agreement with the enemy made in the dead of night. The mental toll of the siege often surpassed its physical counterpart, as those trapped inside grappled with the doubt spawned by isolation and the anticipation of attack. Surrounded by hostile forces, the oppressive sense of doom loomed like a specter over their walled city. With time acting as an enemy, their resolve wore thin under the strain of interminable waiting. Anxiety festered, a constant cycle until every creak of the walls and distant clang of metal sent shivers down spines. Survival transformed into a battle of mental endurance, where even the sane felt the seductive pull of madness created by relentless uncertainty and despair. Leadership during a siege could be the deciding factor between endurance and collapse. City leaders bore immense burdens, acting as beacons of hope in seemingly hopeless times. They often resorted to unconventional methods to boost public morale. Managing limited resources, they strategically distributed food and delivered speeches intended to reignite the flame of resistance in weary hearts. Preserving the people's collective mindset proved as crucial as the city's military defenses. Maintaining calm was a powerful tool, yet under siege, leadership frequently veered into authoritarian territory. Desperate measures taken under duress, such as public executions of suspected traitors or severe punishments for insubordination, painted a grim picture of communal life. Leaders had to balance enforcing discipline with preventing chaos, blurring the line between wise commander and tyrant as they sought to prevent panic and maintain order. As days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, starvation emerged as a second dire enemy. Food reserves dwindled, and the chilling reality of hunger gnawed at both spirit and body. Rats became precious sustenance, and even boots were boiled for a semblance of nourishment. Hunger sowed madness, distorting decision-making and prompting desperate acts. Once civil townspeople faced the horrifying task of deciding who would eat and who would starve, a burden tearing families and friendships apart. Starvation didn't merely leave bodies frail. It corrupted minds, warped judgments, and tested moral boundaries to their absolute limit. Acts unthinkable in peacetime became grim necessities. The bitter stench of malnutrition hung heavily, clouding thoughts and fostering hostility. In such dire circumstances, surrender began to resemble salvation, tempting many to betray their comrades for fleeting reprieves. Hunger knew no loyalty, driving brother against brother and soldier against commander in the frenzy of survival. Alongside starvation came disease, a deadly ally to the besiegers, bred from squalor and overcrowding within the city walls. Poor sanitary conditions fostered illnesses that spread like wildfire, claiming more lives than enemy swords. Soldiers and civilians alike fell victim to unseen pathogens, and a pervasive madness took root. Fueled by infection, each cough became a bad omen. Every rash, a harbinger of doom, transforming collective helplessness into anxiety and hysteria. The grip of disease spared no one, striking noble and peasant alike, reducing all to the same dire circumstances. Healers, overwhelmed and without effective remedies, resorted to frantic attempts at alleviation, often deepening despair through futile gestures. Enclosed in the cycle of disease, death, and delusion, the besieged shared a singular madness, transcending social hierarchies as they awaited their fate in their living tomb. In times where omens guided decisions, superstition offered refuge for the besieged. The suffering of the siege catalyzed desperate grasp for meaning, turning people into fervent believers in divine intervention or celestial reprieve. Omens were closely examined, prophecies echoed through alleyways, and priests wielded newfound power, casting spells or delivering blessings to bolster morale. Yet these superstitions could also lead to division. Zealotry clashed with skepticism. Old societal rifts reopened amidst fervent debate and questions as to whether their plight was a divine test or retribution for sins exacerbated tensions. It was a madness born of survival, a clinging to the intangible aspects of faith to maintain hope. As the siege continued, suspicion loomed large. With each passing day, suspicion cut deeper into the bonds that had once held the community together. Rumors whispered of treachery, secret negotiations with the enemy, and unity dissolved into futility. Acts of treason, whether real or perceived, invited severe repercussions. Public trials and executions of suspected spies became a twisted spectacle, part warning and part catharsis for a populace nearing collapse. Leaders required finesse to navigate this paranoia. Trust diminished, its shadow bristled with threat, a madness inherent in the struggle for survival. Despite this backdrop, the sheer stubborn willpower of the besieged stood as a fortress beyond any stone. Their determination to endure against all odds was a rebellion against cruel fate. Their inner fires of courage transformed madness into an ally. As each obstacle marred their path, an uncanny resilience emerged. Even when reduced to mere hallucinations of salvation, the indomitable human spirit, resilient and haunting, became a tribute to those who traversed the precipice of sanity, surviving to tell tales of madness wielded as an ally in survival's harrowing song.